Coming up on Primetime News, despite the rising death toll, the World Health Organization says the MERS outbreak in Korea is not a global emergency, but rather a wake-up call for all countries. And Korea's foreign minister will make his first trip to Japan since President Park Geun-hye took office in 2013. The ruling and opposition parties have finally agreed to vote on Prime Minister nominee Hwang Kyo-ahn, the final procedure for the confirmation of a new premier. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Wednesday, June 17th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with the latest on the MERS outbreak in Korea. Today, some recoveries have been confirmed.
And another death has been reported too. For that and the latest on the outbreak, we go over to our Kwon Soa standing by at the news center. Soa, fill us in.
Yes, Tia, as you just said, one more person died of the virus. The 54-year-old woman who passed away this morning was in the same hospital last month from the 19th to 20th as the first MERS patient. Now, health authorities said she had pre-existing ailments, including respiratory problems and high blood pressure. Now, this has put the total number of deaths at 20 and the fatality rate to 12.3%. The total number of cases stands at 162, and of the 123 patients who are undergoing treatment at hospitals, 17 are currently in unstable conditions. Now, a good piece of news is that 2 more people have been released from the hospital, bringing the number of people who have recovered up to 19. More than 6,500 people are under quarantine, while more than 3,900 others have been cleared of infection. Meanwhile, a nurse in the city of Incheon who was believed to have contracted the virus has tested negative. This puts Incheon along with Ulsan as a MERS-free metropolitan city. Other regions with no MERS cases are Jeollanam-do province and Jeju-do Island.
Well, some bright spark is that more people are being released from hospitals, so all right, but with tertiary infections and even quaternary infections being reported, there are concerns the situation won't change anytime soon.
Right, especially as there are concerns that the standard incubation period of 14 days seems to be longer in some cases. In fact, a patient 14, or the so-called super spreader, is said to have infected more people after the 2-week period. Another concern is that out of 8 new recent cases, 5 are from Samsung Medical Center, which is now the origin of 80 cases. The hospital said it will enforce its surveillance policy by closely monitoring every patient who was at the hospital from June 2nd to 10th.
And so, do we have the latest on whether the virus is no threat to the general population?
Well, Tia, according to the World Health Organization, it is not. After an emergency meeting on the outbreak on Tuesday in Geneva, the WHO reconfirmed that the virus poses no threat to our society nor to the international community. It said it won't issue a special health alert or any travel restrictions to Korea, saying it does not meet the criteria of a so-called public health emergency of international concern. But in an earlier briefing, the organization did mention that more cases are expected to appear for the time being. Now, Korea's health authorities said their goal is to reduce the number of patients by the end of this month. So let's hope that this will be the case. And that's all I have for now. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thanks for that report, Soa. Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye continued to check up on Korea's MERS response.
That's right. Today, she met with a representative from Samsung Medical Center, a hospital which has been the hardest hit by the outbreak.
She also called for more transparency in managing the crisis. Choi Yoo-sun has the details.
Meeting with the head of the most affected Samsung Medical Center while visiting a state-run research lab in central Korea, President Park said controlling the MERS spread at the Samsung hospital will be pivotal to eradicating the virus in the country. About half of more than 160 patients are believed to have been infected from the Samsung hospital, forcing it to a partial shutdown. President Park repeatedly urged the Samsung hospital to be more transparent in informing the public about infection routes, adding that not sharing all the information spurs greater public anxiety and could hamper government response. This comes as the hospital was found to have missed an opportunity to prevent a spread of the virus by failing to keep track of everyone that could have been infected on its premises. President Park also called on the hospital chief to locate and test everyone suspected of the viral infection. The center's chief took the opportunity to apologize to the president and the Korean people for causing great anxiety in the nation, then vowed to cooperate with authorities to contain the outbreak. At the government's Central Response Headquarters, President Park urged authorities to be more cautious in studying the potential perimeters of the viral spread beyond the global standard.
우리 전문가와 행정 권한을 가진 사람과 거기 병원 원장하고 딱 이렇게 똑똑하게 모여서 어떻게 해야 될 건가 상황 판단하고 그다음에 필요한 지원을 대처해서.
Thanking all the staff at the headquarters working around the clock, President Park asked that they continue their efforts to prevent a further spread of MERS and to wipe out the deadly virus in the country. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
As the MERS outbreak becomes protracted with more and more people in home quarantine, it is getting difficult for health authorities to keep track of all of them, and not everyone is staying put.
This while most people are choosing to stay home in an effort to avoid infection. For more, we turn to our Shin Se-min.
The extended MERS outbreak is keeping people at home, but not everyone is staying there. Just yesterday, a man who was advised to quarantine himself at home after he started showing symptoms of infection left his home and boarded a fishing boat in Incheon for a local tour. After authorities located the 32-year-old, known only by his surname Kim, they called the boat back to port and transferred Kim to a local health center for monitoring. The 15 other people on the boat have not yet shown any symptoms of infection and have not been quarantined. Health authorities have instructed people in home quarantine to stay at home for 2 full weeks and minimize contact with other individuals. But it's getting more difficult for them to keep track of everyone and ensure that they aren't breaking quarantine. Already 4 other people under home quarantine have left their residences. Under the current law, people who break home quarantine will be fined 3 million won or over $2,600. Some people, however, would prefer to stay put. Just this past Sunday, the number of people using public transportation dropped nearly 22% from 2 weeks ago when concerns about MERS began to develop. It's expected that the drop in usage will push down the transportation authorities' income by more than $1.2 million. Worried members of the public aren't going near hospitals either, even if they need drugs. Rather, a jump in sales of non-prescription drugs at convenience stores show that more people have been purchasing basic medicines there. With the MERS virus still spreading, it is unclear when the concerns will subside and the public will feel confident about going through their daily routines. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
We're seeing some breakthrough at Korea's National Assembly as lawmakers will vote on the confirmation of Prime Minister nominee Hwang Kyo-ahn tomorrow morning. Apart from making a deal on the schedule, they've also agreed to talk about improving the confirmation process for future nominees. Our Park Ji-hye tells us more.
After a tug-of-war between the rival parties that has continued since Prime Minister nominee Hwang Kyo-ahn's 3-day confirmation hearing ended last week, the rival camps finally agreed to vote on the nomination on Thursday morning. The decision came after last-minute negotiations between the deputy floor leaders of the two parties Wednesday morning, where the ruling Saenuri Party agreed to accept the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy's demand to set up a special committee on improving the hearing process in exchange for holding the vote on the nominee. The ruling Saenuri Party was aiming to call the vote as soon as possible.
The confirmation of the Prime Minister nominee is an urgent matter that cannot be delayed any further to minimize the vacuum in state affairs.
The Prime Minister nominee has faced harsh criticism from opposition lawmakers who said he's unfit for the post. They said he's not qualified as he wasn't willing to be thoroughly scrutinized over a string of allegations against him, such as his exemption from his mandatory military service and accusations of influence peddling because he didn't turn in all of the related documents. They only agreed to go ahead with the vote after the ruling party agreed to set up the special committee on the hearings.
The special committee is aimed at resolving the long-standing problems with the confirmation hearing process that were revealed at Hwang's hearing, such as a sloppy examination of his credentials and institutional loopholes.
The new prime minister, if confirmed on Thursday, will answer lawmakers' questions on state affairs at the 4-day interpellation session that starts Friday. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
In other news, Korea's top diplomat will visit Tokyo next week as Korea and Japan remain tangled in a dispute over history. It will be Foreign Minister Byungse's first trip to Japan since taking office in 2013. But will it be enough to spark fresh momentum in their relations? Let's turn to our Hwang Kyo-ahn for this report.
Korean Foreign Minister Byungse will make a 2-day trip to Tokyo as the two neighbors struggle for a breakthrough in their frosty ties.
Foreign Minister Byungse will visit Japan from the 21st to the 22nd of June to attend a reception marking the 50th anniversary of Korea and Japan's normalization of relations, which is being held in Tokyo on Monday. He will also hold talks with the Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida.
It'll be Yoon's first visit to Tokyo since taking office in 2013. He canceled a planned trip at the last minute that year, following a controversial visit to the Yasukuni War Shrine by Japanese Deputy Prime Minister Taro Aso. An official at Korea's foreign ministry said Yoon's visit is significant, as it comes amid efforts by Seoul and Tokyo to improve ties in the 50th year of the normalization of their diplomatic relations. On Monday, the Japanese embassy in Seoul will also hold a ceremony to mark the anniversary. Although the leaders of the two countries will not be present for the events, they are each expected to send messages. Still, there is little hope that Yoon's visit will spark a dramatic improvement in their relations. Korea and Japan are mired in a dispute over history centered on Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. The official at Seoul's foreign ministry said that while the two ministers will discuss a range of issues on Sunday, he does not expect any groundbreaking agreement on the so-called comfort women issue. Hwang Kyo-ahn, Arirang News.
Over in Washington, South Korea's foreign minister held talks on Tuesday with U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken. According to our Han Da-eun, the two diplomats discussed a wide range of issues, with North Korea topping their agenda.
South Korea and the United States have agreed to ramp up the pressure on North Korea in an effort to get North Korea to denuclearize. The vow came after South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken met for talks on Tuesday in Washington. Blinken is filling in for Secretary of State John Kerry, who is recovering from a leg injury after a cycling accident. Referring to the six-party denuclearization talks, Seoul's foreign ministry said South Korea and the U.S. will respond strongly to any North Korean provocations or threats, while strengthening cooperation with the other members of the talks for resuming meaningful dialogue. The multilateral dialogue involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, has been stalled for more than 6 years. Regarding President Park Geun-hye's visit to Washington, the two sides agreed to work together to reschedule her trip to the earliest possible date. The South Korean leader postponed her trip last week to cope with the outbreak of Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, at home. The South Korean minister also briefed Blinken on the efforts Korea is making to improve ties with Japan ahead of the 50th anniversary of the normalization of the relations next week. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
North Korea has repatriated two South Koreans who were detained in the north for about a month. The two, known to be a couple in their 50s, were returned through the truce village of Panmunjom this morning. The North said it was sending them back as a humanitarian gesture. The South Korean government is checking their health and investigating why they crossed the China-North Korea border back in May. Pyongyang is still holding 4 other South Koreans captive. They include Kim Jong-uk, a missionary who was arrested by the regime in 2013, and Ju Won-moon, who voluntarily and illegally entered North Korea 2 months ago. Seoul tried to send a letter to Pyongyang last Friday urging the regime to release the 4 detainees immediately, but the North Koreans refused to accept it. Meanwhile, South Korea will return a North Korean ship that was found drifting in the East Sea. Seoul's Unification Ministry said Wednesday that it has decided to repatriate the vessel's 5 crewmen on Thursday, according to their wishes. The North Korean ship was found by the South Korean Coast Guard on Tuesday. The ship was drifting after an engine malfunction. It's the second time this year the South Korean government has returned a boat and its crew following the rescue of 2 North Koreans back in February, also found in the East Sea.
Now shifting gears, a major local think tank has slashed Korea's growth forecast to 2.8% from its earlier projection of 3.7%. It's the first time for a major institute or a government organization to cut their outlook to the 2% range. The Korea Institute of Finance cited the impact from the latest MERS outbreak on top of slowing exports and sluggish demand for the revision. The institute also expressed concerns of Korea's weakening growth potential. The downgrade marks the latest in a series of forecast trimming by institutes at home and abroad. The IMF cut its outlook to 3.3% from 3.7%. And as the MERS outbreak continues to take a toll on the economy, Korea plans to roll out a set of economic measures to reduce the fallout of the outbreak later this month. In an economic ministers meeting on Wednesday, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-won said the current MERS outbreak is prompting a drop in the sales of major retailers, while foreigners are canceling trips to the country. Choi added that the measures will also tackle the current drought that could hurt output of fresh farm produce and hike consumer prices. Although the minister did not elaborate on the details of the planned measures, they will be reflected in the economic policy for the second half of the year. And for the top international headlines, we now connect to our Polly at the News Center.
Our focus today, Swiss prosecutors hunt down evidence in FIFA's widening corruption probe. The U.S. government says no to trans fats, and online shopping giant Amazon takes on the so-called sharing economy.
Paul, let's start in Switzerland, though. Authorities there have announced another big break in the case into football's world governing body. Give us the details.
Well, Malka Lauber, the Swiss Attorney General, says the prosecution is zeroing in on what he described as a suspicious trail of financial transactions allegedly linked to FIFA. But he did warn that this is a huge and complex investigation which could take months, if not years. Lauber revealed on Wednesday that Swiss banks had disclosed 53 cases of possible money laundering, adding to the mounting list of evidence against FIFA. Lauber added that no one, not even FIFA's top boss, Sepp Blatter, would be free from questioning.
Be assured, the OAG will give priority to this case and will act according to the principles of the rule of law. There will be formal interviews of all relevant people. By definition, this does not exclude interviewing the president of FIFA, and this does not exclude interviewing the Secretary General of FIFA.
The Swiss criminal probe, which opened last month, is targeting the winning bids for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups that were awarded to Russia and Qatar, respectively. The International Football Organization is also under investigation by U.S. authorities over alleged bribes worth more than $150 million. And turning to the United States, federal regulators there have set a deadline for eliminating man-made trans fat in all food products manufactured in the country. Now that includes tasty treats from popular cookies and frozen pizza to even coffee creamers. It's a move that's even prompting other countries such as Korea to follow suit. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has given food manufacturers 3 years to remove all artificial trans fats from their products. Trans fat is formed when hydrogen is added to liquid oils to make solid fats, like shortening and margarine, used to enhance food flavor and shelf life. The agency expects the move will help reduce cardiovascular disease, the leading cause of death in the United States.
It's time to address and really phase out the remaining uses of trans fat in the diet so that we can reduce the incidence of heart disease and deaths resulting from heart attack.
The FDA categorizes partially hydrogenated oils, the primary source of artificial trans fat, as not generally recognized as safe. In 2006, the agency began requiring manufacturers to label the trans fat content on packaged foods. Other countries, including Denmark, Austria, Iceland, and Switzerland, have already banned trans fats over health concerns, and Korea is following suit. A study on trans fat by the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety shows a significant drop in trans fat in local snacks in recent years. The amount of trans fat in the 147 snacks surveyed was 0.05 grams per serving, a 93% drop during the 7-year period from 2005 to 2012. Kim Arirang News.
And finally, e-commerce giant Amazon is reportedly eyeing its next big move in the industry based on the so-called sharing economy. The Wall Street Journal reported this week that the company is developing a new mobile application that would outsource deliveries to the general public. Called On My Way, the service would allow anyone with a smartphone to work as paid couriers. The plan would be to cut costs and get packages even faster to customers, but analysts remain divided on whether it's all feasible.
Consumers are making their purchase decisions just as much on price as they are how quickly they get products. To me, that you have to have this service, you have to have this expedited shipping, and if you give up a little bit of control with it, I think that's a sacrifice the company's willing to make to trade off and make sure they can get products to consumers quickly. I think it's critical in this day and age.
Amazon isn't the first to experiment with crowdsourcing its services. The ride-sharing company Uber broke into the delivery business last year, using its army of on-demand drivers to deliver fresh food and even high-end retail products. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hope you aren't surprised by sudden showers and thunderstorm today as outbreaks of rain fell in some of the inland regions, including the capital city. And for tomorrow, the eastern parts of the nation will see passing showers between the morning and late in the afternoon, while the rest of the peninsula will see temperatures remaining as high as today under mostly to partly sunny skies. So high UV index is expected for most parts of the country, and discomfort index will also rise along with high humidity levels. And this means that it's about time that we need to be extra careful in regards to food poisoning. So bear that in mind and take good care of yourself. Now, taking a closer look at tomorrow's temperatures, Seoul will rise to 31, Daegu and Gwangju get up to 27 and 30, while Busan climbs up to 24 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other parts, Daejeon will see a high of 30 and Jeju and Dokdo will peak at 22. Now, the chances of isolated rain continues until Friday, and we have nationwide rain in the forecast on Saturday. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, just like that waterfall, sometimes we need to shut out the noise and go with the flow so that we can make a big splash someday, right?
Yes, of course.
Well, that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you so much for staying with us. This has been Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Please join us at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.